doorknob was trembling. Not enough to rattle, just enough to whisper that someone was on the other side trying very carefully to get in. I held my breath, my eye pressed to the peephole, staring at the crown of a head tilted down, unmoving, patient. Whoever it was, they weren't knocking. It was my first year at the university, the day my parents left me behind with a half-empty dorm room, and the sudden realization that I was officially on my own. Their car disappeared around the corner, and the silence that followed felt heavier than I expected. A few hours later, my roommate arrived. I introduced myself, arm extended, smiling the way you do when you want to start fresh. He stared at my hand like it was a foreign object, then gave a delayed laugh before placing his limp fingers in mine. The contact was cold and brief. He didn't offer his name until I asked. "Dale." He said it quietly, like he wasn't used to speaking out loud. I tried to keep the conversation alive, asking where he was from, what he planned to study. His answers came in single words. Yes, no, sometimes a nervous grin that faded too quickly. Within minutes, the room filled with the glow of our separate laptop screens and the unspoken understanding that this was going to be a long semester. I remember lying on my bed thinking anyone would be easier to live with than this guy. I was wrong. Later that night, after wandering the campus and meeting a few people who seemed normal enough, I came back to find Dale in the exact same position I'd left him in, shoulders hunched, face lit blue by his screen. I greeted him. Nothing, not even a nod. By 9:30, I shut off my lamp and tried to sleep. His keyboard continued clicking for hours, steady and relentless, until sometime around 3 in the morning when it finally stopped. Silence settled in. Then I woke up. The blinds were open now, moonlight spilling across the floor, bright enough to shape everything in silver. That's when I saw him. Dale was sitting on the edge of his bed facing me, completely still. I pushed myself up on my elbows, my voice dry, asking what he was doing. His answer came out as a barely audible, an apology that didn't explain anything. He lay back down without another word. Morning couldn't come fast enough. The next day I noticed he was gone for the first time. It was orientation Saturday, campus buzzing with energy. While walking past the gardens with my assigned group, I overheard 2 students ahead of me asking what someone was doing behind the bushes. I followed their gaze and felt my stomach tighten. Dale was crouched in the dirt, fingers gliding slowly over the bark of a tree, his attention completely absorbed. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't embarrassed. He just kept rubbing the trunk like he was trying to feel something no one else could. I told the 2 students he was my roommate. They laughed awkwardly, apologized, unsure if it was cruel or justified. I laughed too, but inside something felt off. Not funny, not harmless. That evening, I learned the housing office had approved my request for a room change. Relief washed over me. It felt like things were correcting themselves. When I returned that night to pack a few essentials, Dale was sitting at the desk facing the door as if he'd been waiting. I greeted him. His response was flat, emotionless. As I opened my laptop, my stomach dropped. Emails I hadn't read were marked opened. Folders had been accessed. My files rearranged. I asked him carefully if he'd used my computer. His denial came too fast, too loud, the kind of answer that trips over itself. I didn't push it. I was leaving the next day anyway. While grabbing pajamas from my bag, I noticed my clothes weren't folded the way I'd left them. My hands trembled slightly as I zipped it shut. I told myself one more night. Just one more. Somewhere deep in the night, I woke again. I turned my head and saw him kneeling on the floor beside my bag, hands inside it, moving slowly like he didn't expect to be caught. I snapped on the lamp. His face went blank. When I asked what he was doing, he said he thought I had taken his toothbrush by accident. It was the most composed lie he'd told yet. I didn't argue. Something about him warned me not to escalate. The next day I moved into my new dorm and met my new roommate. He was quiet, but normal. We talked a little before bed that Sunday night, enough to ease my nerves. Still, when the lights went out, sleep didn't come easily. Then came the sound. It repeated every 30 seconds or so, irregular but deliberate. I told myself it was the building settling, maybe plumbing, but the noise continued. I got up, careful not to wake my roommate, and followed the sound to the door. The hallway light seeped through the peephole. I leaned in slowly. I could only see the top of someone's head tilted downward. Too close. Too still. That's when I understood. The clicking wasn't random. It was the doorknob moving, tested gently over and over again by someone who didn't want to be heard. My throat tightened. I stepped back and dialed campus police with shaking fingers. Minutes felt like hours. When they finally arrived, I opened the door to see officers holding someone in restraints. Dale. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't confused. It was empty, like he had expected this outcome all along. I explained everything. The computer, the bag, the staring in the moonlight. They listened quietly before leading him away. I never saw him again. I finished my years at the university like anyone else. Classes, friendships, late nights studying. Life moved forward. But sometimes, when a room goes too quiet, I think back to that trembling doorknob and the patient figure standing on the other side. And I still wonder, how long had he been there before I noticed? It hit the blaze with a hard, hollow crack, wood slamming into flame, and my stomach dropped before my mind could decide what to call it. We had been 2 years into a life shaped by that college town. The kind of place where routines make you feel safe until they don't. I had friends who were easy to be around, the sort you could laugh with until your cheeks hurt. On a slow October night when nothing else was planned, the three of us stole away from the dorms to a small clearing on the far side of the campus lake. The place was private by accident, a thin slice of shoreline framed by birch and shadow, the kind of spot that smelled like wet earth and old leaves. We liked that it was forgotten. There was a ring of stones for a fire. We carried in beer, set logs, and let the orange light lean out over our knees. Conversation eased into its familiar shape. Jokes, complaints, the kind of talk that sounds important at midnight and thin in the morning. One of my friends laughed until he folded into the leaf litter, hands on his stomach. I remember the way the low smoke curled past his face, turning his smile momentarily fragile. Then, all at once, the evening tightened. My other friend stopped mid-breath. His laugh died. We all went quiet. The kind of silence that falls when you realize you're not alone. Far off, something moved where darkness sits thick. At first, we blamed the woods. Raccoons, deer, some other students taking a shortcut. The fire betrayed us, making our silhouettes larger than we were, inviting eyes. We stuffed bottles into a backpack and tossed what we couldn't hide into the lake. My hands were unsteady. The beer made my heart feel too loud. I kept thinking of campus security strolls through the preserve, of being caught for something dumb. That small, practical fear slid almost immediately into something colder. Something snapped. A sharp, sudden break not far from the fire. It wasn't a single footstep. The sound moved, deliberate and unhurried, tracing a circular path around our little island of light. It felt choreographed, like some observer walking the perimeter before making a choice. We didn't say anything. No one offered to go look. None of us wanted to be the voice that called out to a stranger in the dark. Instead, we sat small and private, trying to shrink into the firelight as if that could make us invisible. The noises kept reshaping. Dry twigs underfoot, the skitter of leaves. Each sound landed on my nerves, ricocheting. We pretended to joke at first, because laughter is a useful hedge against fear. But a laugh is fragile in a place like that. It breaks quickly when the unknown presses close. Then, a hard thud exploded through the night, and everything went electric. A stick had been thrown, landing right in the center of our flame. It spat and hissed. Firelight leapt across our faces in a single accusatory flash. For a beat, we couldn't tell if someone was playing a terrible joke. A flurry of motion, one friend bolted, his figure swallowed by the trees. The other and I stayed frozen, exchanging dumb, half-formed smiles because we wanted to believe it was a childish prank. Hope is a lazy kind of courage. Then another branch came, aimed low and cruel. It struck my friend across the face. The sound of him colliding with the ground and the wet, ungraceful cry he made lodged in my ears like a stone. Everything that followed happened in a rush and in a fog. I threw my shoulder under the backpack, helped him to his feet, tasted copper and smoke in my mouth. My friend's hand trembled when he gripped my sleeve. Blood had matched the dark on his skin, not a gash deep enough for cinema, but enough to make everything feel urgent. Our breaths came short and hot. We moved like people on a single train track. Get out. Don't stop. We ran the path back toward the road that separates the preserve from the dorms, a narrow stretch of pavement that suddenly looked softer and safer only because it offered direction. Halfway there, I heard it. Measured steps coming toward the roadway from the edge of the trees. Not a rush, but a close, advancing sound that wanted to close the distance. We didn't look back. We didn't argue. Feet burned on the leaf-slick trail until the dorm building rose into view like a promise. We burst onto the stairwell and into the fluorescent hum of our floor. We found our third friend already sitting on his bed, pale under the lamp, staring at the window. We pressed our faces to the glass and watched. Down below, at the fringe where dark met the dim of passing streetlights, a figure paced. Slow, patient steps traced near the tree line. Every time a car rolled by, it moved away into shadow. When the light faded, it came out and began pacing again. It was a choreography of avoidance and observation, like someone testing how long it might be before anyone noticed. Eventually, and without fanfare, the person retreated into the woods and, by our count, vanished. We watched until the road had no movement, until the night seemed to fold back into itself. After that, the three of us did something people do when they're trying to prove to themselves that the danger is over. We cracked more beers, sat in the glow of our lamps, and tried to laugh. Within 10 minutes, the edges of the night softened. The adrenaline dulled into something awkward and easy. We convinced ourselves we had been safe. The next morning stripped away that reckless comfort. The memory of a branch across a face unfolded differently in daylight. The laugh lines looked thinner in the sun. I kept replaying the pacing figure and the way light made it hesitate. Who walks around like that, timing steps to cars? Why throw a branch? Why aim to scare and then walk away? I still think about the small things. The smell of smoke that night, the taste of metal in my mouth, the feel of a friend whose hands were shaking so badly he could hardly tie his shoes. I think about how easy it was to be brave in the dark, until the moment something broke the illusion. I think about how the woods learned our shapes that night, how they cataloged our sounds and returned them in a slower, stranger breath. We never went back into those depths after dark. We did not talk about it much, not because we had nothing to say, but because some conversations are too close to the edge to touch. Sometimes, weeks later, when I walked past that stretch of trees during the day, the clearing seemed to watch me with silent patience, as if time had been folded there and left to wait. I still ask myself, late at night, was it a person who wanted to frighten us? Or something that moves and mimics the patterns of people? What did it want that night? And why did it stop when the cars passed? The questions don't tidy into answers. If you heard me tell this and felt your skin prickle, tell me, would you have stayed by that fire or run with us? Comment below. Tell me what you would have done. The woods remember more than we do, and sometimes they keep what they learn.